that in the first 2 weeks of the exhibit in October, we've had quite a few visitors to the United Nations. Our statistics show maybe over 30,000 visitors, and hopefully many of those have come also to see the exhibit and also to take a tour of the United Nations, which is well worthwhile. If you haven't done that, I highly recommend it. I'd like to now turn the floor over to the curator of the exhibit. That's Cynthia Smith, and she is going to be the moderator tonight of this second in a series of educational panels, which Cooper Hewitt is organizing over the next couple months in conjunction with the exhibit. This panel tonight will discuss the design exchange, and it's my pleasure to introduce now Cynthia Smith to take over the program. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Cooper Hewitt National Design Museum is very pleased to partner with the UN Academic Impact Initiative in presenting Design with the Other 90% Cities exhibition at the United Nations. So thank you for having us. How many people here tonight have seen the exhibition yet? Great. If you haven't, I encourage you to go. It's at the UN Visitors Center. You enter over here at 46th Street, and it's up until January 9th. So please, please go. A little bit about Cooper Hewitt. We're part of the Smithsonian Institution. That's our national system of museums here in the United States. Cooper Hewitt is on the move. While our galleries are under renovation, we're growing another floor of galleries over at 91st and 5th Avenue. We're presenting a number of other exhibitions throughout the city, including here at the United Nations. Graphic design, now in production, will open in May at Governor's Island. We also continue with our design lecture series. Historic design lecture took place, the first one last night at the University Club, the Morris Lectures. The next one will be in April. As Lillian mentioned, 2 more public programs that explore the issues and design solutions examined in Design with the Other 90% Cities exhibition will be held here at the United Nations. The next one is November 17th, Sustainable Inclusive Cities, A Right to the City. And also on December 1st, Community Upgrading in Bangkok. That's a case study, and we're bringing a number of the stakeholders from Bangkok, Thailand, who worked on the project here. They're both at the UN. To register and find out more about each of these lectures, please go to cooperhewitt.org. Design with the Other 90% Cities is a second in an exhibition series. It focuses on design solutions for close to 1 billion people living in informal settlements, more commonly called slums, favelas, squatter settlements. The names go on. Tonight, we've gathered designers and planners from around the globe, all whose work is represented in the exhibition. They provide innovative solutions and groundbreaking approaches for growing urban populations and new economies. Denied basic services, proper shelter, jobs, and other advantages cities offer, informal settlement residents are exchanging design information and collaborating to build pro-poor cities throughout the world. Benjamin Bradleau works with a transnational group that is creating these opportunities, Shack and Slum Dwellers International. Benjamin works with the Cape Town, South African-based Secretariat of Shack and Slum Dwellers International, documenting the work of SDI-affiliated community organizations throughout Africa, Asia, and Latin America. Ben is currently a candidate for a Master's in City Planning in the International Development Group, is an assistant professor and researcher with the Faculty of Architecture at the University of Buenos Aires. She has coordinated fieldwork and research groups in several slums in Buenos Aires. She has published papers, articles, chapters about social production of housing and habitat. As a director of Habitat for the university's Secretariat of Community Action, she has coordinated a group of volunteer students and researchers from different disciplines who designed, produced, and distributed a free workbook, the Urbanism Manual for Precarious Settlements. You can download the manual on the city's exhibition's website. Currently, she is working at the Secretariat of Research, producing researchers, events, and editing books, as well as continuing her work in slums. Leading the design revolution in Africa is Rolf Mulder, the founder and managing director of Cape Town, South Africa-based ... XYZ design firm. Rolf's designs have been featured in international exhibitions and have received numerous design awards. A leader in South Africa's burgeoning design community, he is a council member for the Cape Peninsula University of Technology, sits on the board of directors and steering committee for design institutes and innovation forums. Rolf is a founding member of the Cape Town Design Network, the Network for Design Africa Designers, the Industrial Design Society of South Africa, and Design with Africa Initiative, another project which is featured in the exhibition. Rolf's industrial design work continues to inspire me. This is the second exhibition I've included his product design work in. The first was the Cooper Hewitt's Design Triennial, Why Design Now? Anna Rubbo is an associate professor on the Faculty of Architecture, Design and Planning at the University of Sydney in Australia. Her research areas and interests include professional education and inclusive urbanization, participatory processes, architectural history and biography, housing and gender in relation to education and the profession, globalization and architecture. Anna has worked in practice in Australia and the UK. Her doctorate investigated cultural and design questions in relation to housing and settlement patterns in rural areas of Colombia, South America. Anna is a visiting scholar at the Columbia University and the University of Michigan. Growing out of her involvement in the UN Millennial Project Task Force to improve the lives of slum dwellers, Anna convened global studios in Istanbul, Vancouver, and most recently Johannesburg, which resulted in collaborative design work represented in the exhibition. Our moderator tonight, Gabriela, is an adjunct professor at the Graduate School of Architecture, Planning, and Preservation at Columbia University here in New York. Gita serves on the advisory board of the Earth Institute's Millennium Cities Initiative, is a past president of the AIA Japan chapter. She's worked on urban design projects in Japan, India, and as far away as Turkey, Jamaica, and Ghana. Has authored several books on architecture and urbanism. Gita co-founded URBS, User-Generated Cities, a nonprofit located in Dharavi, a large informal settlement in India. They partner with disadvantaged urban communities to improve both the physical and social infrastructure of urban neighborhoods, organize participatory planning workshops, and develop web-based tools with local communities. I highlighted URB's work in the exhibition's catalog. New inclusive urbanism approaches like URB's are responding to the subtleties of local culture. In their Urban Typhoon workshops from Tokyo to New Delhi, local residents collectively author their urban visions with small multidisciplinary teams. It's quite a panel we put together from around the world. I'm extremely excited to hear the conversation and look forward to a lively discussion, and I'll turn it over to Gita. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, before we begin, we'd like to get to know you all. So can you please raise your hands? How many designers are there in the audience? Can you? Thank you. And how many people from academia? I see a lot of my wonderful students here, but students and faculty, could you all please raise your hands? Thank you. And people in finance, law? Yes? Okay. Thank you very much. Right. So we are going to first begin the panel by asking our wonderful, wonderful speakers here to introduce their work in just about 5 to 7 minutes, and then we'll throw open the panel to questions from you. So I'm going to begin by asking Benjamin Bradleau to tell us about his work with SDI.
Sure. Hi. Thanks to Cynthia and Cooper Hewitt for inviting me and also for including SDI in this wonderful exhibit. Maybe I can begin by just saying something very simple, which is that poor people are the most revolutionary designers in the world today. This is clearly the lesson of the exhibit that we have here. And, you know, it may sound ridiculous to say this about people who are living cheek by jowl, without water, electricity, toilets, without security of employment or security of knowing whether the police will come and destroy their shack in the middle of the night. But it's out of those extreme constraints of poverty and social exclusion that a new way of designing homes and neighborhoods and cities is emerging. So I want to use two stories to suggest one broad lesson for how we can rethink the significance of design in the world. We can see design as a political tool to support the poor, to bridge the divides that they face so often in cities in the global south. There's an area in Cape Town that's called Philippi, which has many informal neighborhoods with shacks almost literally on top of each other. The South African government has built homes for some of the people who live there, but like for many poor people in cities throughout the country, the informal shack settlements are continuing to grow. Currently, the government estimates that there are 2,600 such informal settlements throughout the country. So along Sheffield Road in Philippi, there's a small neighborhood of 167 shack households. The shacks there were locked in a very tight configuration where the only way to walk through the settlement was basically through a narrow maze of dark alleys. There were no toilets and only a couple of water points within that settlement. And the land was reserved for a future widening of Sheffield Road, so the city had no plans to ever do anything in that area. But the community used design as a tool to, one, organize itself, two, to plan its space, and three, to negotiate with the city. Led by the women in the community began saving just small amounts of money, and they also performed their own socioeconomic household survey, which allowed them to draw a map of the existing neighborhood layout. They then worked with a community architect at a small NGO called CORC, or the Community Organization Resource Center, to design a method to rearrange the shacks in the settlement to open up public space. They discussed amongst themselves the existing social relationships amongst the neighbors and agreed to arrange the settlement in clusters of about 15 shacks. In the meantime, the Cape Town city government, which was very impressed by the initiative of the community, agreed to install toilets and more water points in the settlement. This was despite the fact that according to the government's own rules, they should never be developing in that area in order to save the space for the future widening of the road. So On the day when the first cluster of 15 shacks moved, the change was remarkable. The cluster was arranged around a common courtyard, and that very same day, the women who lived in that cluster erected a laundry line to claim the public space. Now, when I go to Sheffield Road, children are playing in all the courtyards in every cluster that's been arranged in this way in the settlement, and parents sit outside their shacks with a watchful eye over their children. So now this neighborhood has become a model for communities throughout the country. It's like a learning center. You have communities from all over the city and really all over the country that come visit Sheffield Road to exchange lessons and strategies for how to upgrade their own settlements. This kind of learning has allowed for the formation of a network, which is called the Informal Settlement Network of informal settlement communities, which is now in negotiations, constant negotiations with the city of Cape Town, and they have an agreement to do 20 such upgrades throughout the city. So the work of design in one neighborhood becomes the seed for the foundation of a new kind of paradigm for communities, design, and politics throughout the city. I have just one more story about how communities have used design to build political power. And this time it's not just about a few hundred people, but about tens of thousands of people. In Nairobi, the parastatal Kenya Railways Corporation has long wanted to evict many of the residents of the railway slums of Kibera and Mukuru. They want to do this in order to upgrade the train line, and this is a process that's going on in many countries throughout Africa that want to upgrade their transport infrastructure as a part of a broader strategy for economic growth. The SDI-affiliated Federation of Slum Dwellers in those neighborhoods organized residents to do a massive household survey about 5 years ago. This put a human face on what the railway company was previously seeing as an inhuman mass of violence and disease. In turn, the railway company delayed the eviction. Meanwhile, SDI facilitated a learning exchange between slum dwellers and employees of the railway company in Kenya to visit with their counterparts in Mumbai, where the SDI-affiliated federation there had also undertaken a similar process in the 90s. At the time in India, this operated as a community-driven tool to allow communities to negotiate armed with their own information, to plan the pace and scale of relocation, as well as what kinds of developments can happen where people are already living. In Mumbai, the original community maps show this history in very clear detail. You can see which shacks are of households that have been moved to transit housing, which are in permanent housing, and which are still living along the line. So back in Nairobi, after the visitors came back from Mumbai, the Kenya Railways Company agreed that a new household survey should take place for a proper relocation strategy. That activity was completed about a year ago, and now the communities are armed with their own information firmly at the negotiating table with interests that would otherwise be very powerful. So from Cape Town to Nairobi to Mumbai, it's ordinary poor people who are using design as a tool for a political process. It's a process that changes the way politicians, government officials, private sector, and other professionals address exclusion in cities. Often we like to make poverty just a matter of if we have the right tool or the right thing, the right technology. But poor people are demanding something more than that. And they're doing it not just with words, but with their actions. They're saying to us, work with us. We are the solutions to our own problems. And design is central to this. We live in a world where spatial divides of cities condemn informal neighborhoods to lack of services, transport, employment, adequate shelter, and legal rights. It's this lack of democracy and inclusion in the halls of decision-making power that produces exclusion. So the design of the home and the neighborhood and the city is the foundation on which ordinary poor people build their networks of knowledge and political power. As professional architects, designers, planners, and politicians begin to recognize the work that the poor are already doing, they will have to imagine new kinds of partnerships with organizations of the poor. These are partnerships to include the poor in institutions that can produce something other than the divided and unequal cities of today. The glimmers of light that exist are rooted in the acts of everyday survival that poor people are undertaking. You can see some of these in this exhibit. These will be the foundations for new inclusive cities in our world. Thanks.
Thank you, Ben. That's wonderful. We're going to talk more about your work, but I'm going to ask Gabriela to please tell us about this wonderful manual that her organization has produced. Please.
Well, first I'm thanking the Copperhewitt quickly because I have 6 minutes, so thank you. And this is the manual of urbanism for slums or well, slums we can say. Okay, next one. And I work at the University of Buenos Aires. It's a very big free university. In my faculty we have architecture, also landscape, and also graphic design at the same faculty. So it's the manual was made with people from all these careers and also from another careers. And we were working 4 years on different slums, and we found different problems that we had and the slums had, and also in our relationship. One of them was, I don't read really, so maybe I'm quite, well, one of these problems was that slums have, some slums have group dynamics, problematic dynamics of groups, and other slums, they have problematic things with urban technical knowledge. They didn't know what's the law and what were the codes. Another slum, they have it. Some they have, some they haven't. They have not. And also some of them have legal knowledge about how to prevent eviction and how to another legal, they lack of legal knowledge, some of them, and some of them they have legal knowledge. And we also have we also have not that, we also didn't have this legal knowledge. Yeah, we came from urban design and architecture, so we didn't know so much, so we had problems when they asked us. We have to go to research, and that knowledge was not so easy to find. We also have a time in our work with slums, we have a timing problem because slums grow up so quick, and we went every week, once a week, and we say, okay, here it would be good to be a street, and we went after a week and there were no streets. Yeah, some people say, yeah, we told them we have to have a street, but they wouldn't listen to us. We have a timing problem. Yeah, once a week it was not enough, and we also had some quantity problem. We were a few, and there is a lot of slums, and people would love us to go to another slums, but we couldn't. So we decided to create a tool to work for us. So next one. So one of the chapters of the manual, the biggest chapters, is how to build my own neighborhood. It plays one of the chapters, it works on location. The knowledge for this part, we took it from field work, because most of the slums, they settle on the lands that market don't want, because there won't be evict there, yeah? So those lands, of course, are very bad lands, flooding lands and stuff like that. So we work a lot on the lands where it's good be to stay and where it would be better to go. The next one, we also work about plots and blocks and what the law talks about, how would be the plots. Most of that knowledge we took it from the codes, but also some of this we included also thinking about the field work we were doing, like the draw down in the left, that maybe for us, urban designer, is obvious that every plot should give one side to the street, but it's not so obvious in the fields, not because people doesn't know, but people just put their houses and after that think about streets, and it's a very big problem after a while. No. We also thought about some urban programs. Most of that knowledge, we took it from our common urban programs, but also some of them we have to make some research, like places for the garbage pickers that we didn't find nothing in literature, so we went there and we asked how it should be a program, architectural program for garbage pickers. We also took on infrastructure. It was a very problematic chapter because we were all the time trying to not to give reasons to put someone else in jail, so we couldn't say that you should make infrastructure that way because that's illegal. But we put some information because people always they buy the smallest pipes because it's cheaper, but after a while those pipes don't work, so we recommend some sizes. And the next one, we also work in identity because a lot of slums are called as the government called them, like with numbers, and which is not very nice. So we work on identity and how to name a street, and if there is a street, you should keep the number and all stuff, because the point on that was to integrate slums to the formal city. So as if you make a street that continue the street, you should try to do it, and also to keep the naming and the numbers and stuff. In the next one, we also work with what does it say there? With the legal issues, different legal issues like the rights. We thought it was very important to talk about rights so people can know that they have a right to have a house. It's not that they are making something wrong to settle. They have to settle somewhere, and they also have a right, and it's important to face society if you face it knowing that you have the right. Also about codes and land codes and stuff, because we all the time try to articulate with the codes, because if people build their slums, their neighborhoods following the codes, after that it's easier to legalize that. You don't have to throw down things and build them again, and it's easier. Also on housing plans and stuff. Also about group dynamics on the assembly. We have excellent group dynamics in some places and some slums, and problematic group dynamics in another. So we took this knowledge from the field and try to capture it. Leadership, also there leadership, we have a good leaders in some place. This is a very critical issue, leadership. Slums that are okay, they have a good leader, and it's very problematic when they don't have a good leadership. So we talk about that also. This, we also explain how to make a participatory designing process. Designing because because pointing on the assembly, but going to the design the place. Yeah, all you have to do to make your wishes be real, become real. And the next one, we also have some other things, annexes to help. Yeah. Well, and we made some. It was half of the time. It took us 2 years. Half of the time was researching. The other half of the time was to make it easy reading, because a lot of people who want slums, they read, but they don't read so much. So we needed to be very graphic and very clear, and we all work a lot on that. So we have a icon codes to divide the text, so it's easier to read, and also we try to put a lot of big graphics. And well, the next one, we have a thing. I don't like the word empowerment, but I had to put it because I didn't find no better. But as we took from the people a lot of our knowledge, because a lot of the knowledge, as he says, slum dwellers are good designers, so a lot of our knowledge there was taken from the people. We wanted to show that, and we wanted people to know that we took them from them, because it's like to honorify them, and also because they can see that it was made already by another neighborhood, so they can do it also. And it's not, big teacher talking. We are transmitters of the popular knowledge. So we put the good experiences that we have seen in neighborhoods built by themselves, and also some knowledge. Some of the graphic designs was handwriting, like we saw it was in the assemblies, and we wanted to be an easy reading book. Yeah, so not vibrant, not very tight, so people can feel close to the book. Yeah. Also, what does it say there?
Can you make
dissemination? Yeah, quick. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Well, dissemination. Yeah. This go and go and go, and we show also how you can, on the parts you can, up to you finally you have all the neighborhood. And next one, we also include the voices of the people when they taught us something. We included their voices also. And well, the next one, quickly. And next one, and what we thought the best the best thing of the manual is that, we already have a lot of experiences connecting the formal city with the informal city. We know some strategies about that already. What is new in the manual is that connects in the timing of the government with the slums, yeah, because slums have a logic, time logic to be very quick, because to prevent eviction, yeah, you have to grow up and hard, quick, so they can't throw you out. And the governments have different logic. They go to a slum when the slum is already very dense and very big, because that when it becomes a political issue, yeah? So the problem there is that there is already a lot of problems on that builded slum, and to make it better, you have to, to move part of the land, to throw some houses, and it's very, very expensive. It's like stupid because people build something, invest their money and their time. After that, government throw it out, and after that, it builds it again. So we thought it's the great idea. Just do it well from the beginning. Yeah. So after that, it's cheaper and it's easier, and you prevent eviction because it's well done. Government can't say anything. It's well done. Just give me the legality. And well.
Thank you.
Yeah. No more.
Gabriela has wonderful, many things to say.
Okay, sorry.
But hold all your questions for her, and we're going to ask Ralph to talk about his work, and then we'll come back to questions.
Yeah. Sorry.
No. Please.
Thank you. My project is in bicycle modules, and I'm from a design company, excuse me, as you were told before, where we really believe in human behavior is really part of the connection between design. And we started this initiative, Design with Africa, which is really about design and Africa, but the connecting word between that is the with, and that's where the participation is happening. Now the project started in 2005 with the interdesign that was endorsed by ICSID. ICSID is the International Council for Society of Industrial Designers. And these interdesigns are used to bring designers together from the whole world. In this case, there were over 60 designers. And the process is to go through research, co-design, and then also making prototypes. And as a result of that, we would then find that there's a lot of aspects that we previously didn't know about, and find that there's ingenuity in Africa, which is really exciting. For instance, like, look at the safety shoe on the top left-hand side. And also that there's some use of materials that, because it hasn't got access to the materials that you normally would find, it will make things out of what is found out there. Sometimes the farmer's wire would be used as well, but this is part of the whole process. So the bicycles, essentially what it is to take a normal process where you make a bicycle in a factory and then deliver it to somebody who would use it, is to say, well, let's still use the factory and let's go use the high-tech components like the wheels and the spokes and the pedals and so on. But let's look at that whole process. What can we bring closer to the user? And then the second row down there, with your parts will be stamped in a factory close to where people can assemble it. Put in a jig. The jig is also something that's stamped. You really can't go wrong, and it's welded together by somebody who is skilled to do that. And a lot of people are skilled in doing that. And then in the last tier there is assembling the bicycle, and that's happening by somebody in a community who has a skill to do these things. And this whole process was not sort of dictated, but was all a part of that co-design process and discourse. And for instance, and those examples there are of people in the community putting those, both the bicycle and the cart together. So that's the whole process of the making. And if you look at the bottom middle slide there, for instance, if you look at the exhibition, the mudguard is this interned, inverted old tire, and that's used as a mudguard. So there's a lot of things happening out of there. And for instance, that the same part that is making the bicycle also makes a cart. And you can, out of the cart, the need to transport people to hospital, you can make an ambulance, or you can carry your wood or your water. And the business model behind this would be to have a franchise where somebody can, they're trained, and this will obviously grow. And then it's put into a container. from a container, the parts are assembled, people use them, and after time they can bring them back and repair. So, and just to give you an idea that it is quite an affordable product. A normal postman's bicycle would cost you about $200, whereas the bicycle put together there would be between $120 and $150 retail, and enough money for people who are in the process to make money and to sustain their life from that. So where does this bring us to? Is Design with Africa is this initiative that we've started to really look at this participatory design methodology, and it's inclusive, and is to bring people together in Africa to really work on initiatives like this, that we can both talk about it, we can write opinion pieces, we can research, we can make things, and also to really bring the community closer to and in contact with designers. So what we do find is then that a big thing in Africa is Ubuntu. I don't know how many of you know what Ubuntu is, but in essence it is I am because we are. And it really talks about is that me as an individual can only exist if I have a community around me. And but we do have the constraints and challenges. But those constraints are really that the perception that maybe that the industrialized world have about Africa is that we are not poor, we just don't have a lot of money. And there's an opportunity there that there is a different way of doing things in Africa. And it's got credibility in the sense that there's authenticity and there's a voice from the people to say that this is what we want and this is what we can do, and we're part of this solution, and that you can't just look at what's above the surface, but you've got to delve a little bit deeper to see that there is a culture, there's a wish by people to also be part of the solution. And so if you look at this in a normal fashion of my profession, for instance, in the design process, if you look below the line there, it talks about the business focus, which would mean there's research, there's the design, and there's development, and then that gives the commodity, and then it goes to the consumer. And that leads to consumption and also landfills. But if you take this other approach that we're really looking at today, at this dawn that we're standing at, the world changing, that people are important in the solution, then we find that the people can become the stakeholder in the whole process, and that it's not just for consumption, but there's a stakeholder in the whole process. That so through the discourse and through the co-designing effort and the making, there's the process leads to people being part of it. And also, if you take the sustainability into account there, then also then they become custodians, which is far better than if you think about consumption and landfill. Thank you. The business opportunities in Africa are the same. What we do find is that there's transport is needed, and this is a different type of transport that's happening in the form of carts and things like that. And then East Africa, where you find bicycles being used, they're called border. They go from the taxi rank across the border to and ferrying people across there. And same as in Asia, stacking of bicycles to cart goods around. And that the bottom right slide is quite important, because there's something about aspiration and also about the personalization of product. And that's happening a lot in Africa. We've just recently done a research on vehicle manufacture, and it's incredible to see how objects are personalized and to make it people's own, and people being proud of that. And now if you have to look at what's happening, and we've heard in the previous discussions about cities, what's happening is that there's a formal structure that's happening in markets, and there's informal, but both serving the same purpose. And this is sort of the meeting of those two that's starting to happen in cities. In my city, Cape Town, is now being transformed because the cycle paths are now dedicated for cycles. No cars can park there, no cars can drive there. And it is this to show that it's an indication of cities waking up to attend to this issue at hand. And then very proud of this, but Cape Town, my city's just been nominated or designated the World Design Capital for 2014. There's now four cities that's the fourth city in the running. And it's important to look at design, what design is doing in those cities and transforming it, and the emphasis on design, and not just going for the normal way of legislating change. And then so Africa is a sandbox of opportunities. There's lots there that can be done. And I've got 2 more slides, but we can keep it later for a discussion that I can bring of products.
Just show them, because then we won't have to come back
then I'll
to
quickly
it.
show them.
Yeah.
This is the next product that we're doing in collaboration with the Shuttleworth Foundation. It is Ubuntu software. It's free software for people, and the question is, people want to start their own business, and so what you need is a kiosk to disseminate the software. And if you can look at it there, there's a keyboard underneath there. You can show the next slide. The keyboard operates on just through a mouse and a rubber. It's made by sort of just handmade. And so what it would mean is recycling old computers that the world doesn't want anymore, wrapping them in blankets, throw a couple of books into the crate, and then the person can transform this crate themselves and making it into a kiosk, and through that have a product to start a business. And then as they go on and become more successful, then upgrade to something more sophisticated if they need. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Anna Rubbo is our last panelist to speak, and then we will go to questions.
Okay, thank you very much, and thank you for the invitation. What I wanted to do was perhaps sort of touch on some of the issues that have already been touched on, but also to make a presentation which would actually make you aware that this is not my presentation, but I am seeing it as a presentation representing the people who are in the exhibition. Now, I know very few of you have seen it yet, but the project that is in this exhibition from South Africa, again, it's quite curious, there's so much South Africa, is one called WASSUP, and that is the Water, Amenities and Sanitation Services Upgrade. And this project has been developed over some time, and the names that you see on the bottom of this are mine, Lucky Manyisi and Lerato Monama and Jennifer Vanderbush. And I was really pleased that they all came to New York for the exhibition and were able to give some talks at universities. And so we're able to share, and I think that is one, I just want to make that point because I think it's really important that there is, when we talk about innovation, we talk about exchange, that we actually talk about exchange piece and person to person. And of course Ben has touched on this really beautifully because that's what SDI does, you know, there's groups going from Kenya to Mumbai, Nairobi, train tracks and all that. But I think there's not enough of that discussion that goes on an sort of an international level. So I was very thrilled, therefore I am just the voice for our project. So next please. What I just want to talk to you a little bit about is the project that this comes out of, which is a project called Global Studio. The text is too small because I can't read it from here. But this is a project that was that grew out of my work with the UN Millennium Project from 2002 to 2004, when the Millennium Development Goals were introduced, and they decided they needed to set up some task forces to think about policy and strategy and how you might implement them. I was on the one which was how to improve the lives of slum dwellers. And one of the constant refrains that came through, and there were many, there were several representatives from Slum Dwellers International on that task force, And the constant refrain was, for those of you and many designers, was that designers, the planners, the architects, the industrial designers, designers as a whole, really didn't know how to work with the urban poor, and that it was time that the old top-down models were discarded, and the whole notion, which you've already heard Rolf and Ben and Gabriela talking to, the notion of people as partners. And so towards the end of this work, as I work in a university and work in education, I said, well, why don't we try and do something about this? And so this project was born, which was called Global Studio, and over the last few years it has been operating in 3 different countries and about to start in India. But the idea was that we would bring together on an interdisciplinary sort of way. We've had people from 11 disciplines working together, and for those of you who are designers, you'll know that is no easy thing to do, and to get people to start talking, but to start working together collaboratively with people as partners, and to really try and to I suppose, impact the possibility of the Millennium Development Goals as being a success from the professional point of view. Can we as professionals do our work better? And so this is really what this project has been about, but also with some real results on the ground. Next, please. Oh, this is really very bad planning on my part, but because I can't read. But just to pick up two of the aims that we've had for Global Studio, and they're the ones in the larger type, is that we've tried to really work with and learn from communities and individuals experiencing disadvantage. We've also tried to develop appropriate participatory design and planning skills, and to assist with design and other knowledge to achieve useful ends. So that has been sort of two of the highlights. Next, please. From 07 to 09, we ran programs in Johannesburg. We went there at the invitation of the City of Johannesburg and Wits University, and we worked with many people from around the world. Something we have had in overall numbers 500 people from over 30 countries, and tried to maintain a sort of balance between developed and developing countries. Next. Oh, can I just go back a bit, because I was just going to make a point at the bottom. There's an idea that we've sort of been thinking about, which sort of introduces this notion of academic acupuncture. It could equally be applied to a sort of professional acupuncture, and I think this is what Rolf has been talking about. And so where does this sort of notion of acupuncture, where you have privilege, you have skills, you have knowledge, you have access, how can that then combine with design thinking to focus then on innovative solutions? Next, please. Now, I just want to talk a little bit about Deep Sloot, which is where the project is located. This is the province of Gauteng. In the middle spot is Johannesburg, downtown. The red spot up on the top is Deep Sloot, about 24 kilometers outside the center of Johannesburg, home to probably 160,000, 200,000 people, probably 60% unemployed. Next. Over the 3 years that we did, we really tried to work with this notion of people and partners to find out what was it that people wanted, what would make their lives better, and how design might help for that. So again, I think there's a cautionary tale to be had here, which is you don't, as a designer, run in and say there's a design solution, but in fact you look at what will improve people's lives, and then it may be a design solution, it may be something quite different. The projects that we got involved in through that process had to do with information, had to do with housing, had to do with arts and culture, and had to do with environment. And I'll just give you a little snippet on each of those before we focus on the one that's in the exhibition. Next, please. One of these was a very practical one, which was shack installation. People complained how hot or how cold their shacks were. They are just corrugated iron structures, so very cold or very hot, depending on the season. And so we worked with people to insulate these. Not a perfect solution, because there's problems with condensation, but they lasted a year or a year and a half. And the temperature difference was quite remarkable. As one woman said, she said, last night I used 4 blankets. Tonight I only used 1 blanket. So the temperature differential that was possible by something quite simple as insulation was profound. It's not a popular project because South Africa has a very wonderful constitution and wants to provide housing for everybody. I think it's totally unrealistic, but so if you start improving shacks, it really goes against your policy of giving people better quality housing. Next, please. Another one we got involved in was doing some design projects for a new arts and culture network that we helped form. So here's some design proposals, again working participatively with people. Next. Some urban design proposals of looking at what might be some befores and afters. How might you take a very sort of harsh landscape and improve it? And again, working with people to do that. Next. And some proposals for a bridge and new social spaces which were very much needed and are now happening to cross a floodplain. Next, please. Now, I want to just focus a little bit what the project is on in the exhibition. This dealt with, it's a sanitation, water and drainage upgrade. And of course, these things are immensely important, but I think not exclusively so. And we also got very much involved in cultural issues. And I think to focus entirely on what are the practical issues is a mistake, because life is rich, life is dynamic and creative. But this project dealt with the situation, which I hope you can see there, which was toilets, which are built in pairs with a water pipe to one side and a drain. The toilets were blocking, the taps didn't work, the drains were blocking as well. And so over a couple of years, students who were involved in this started to work with people on possible solutions. Next, please. The focus of our work has been in this, you can see this little square in the red, which is what they call the reception area. When people come to a township like this, they come to one place and they live extremely densely. So that small area probably has 45,000 people living in it. So it's extremely dense. Next, please. What you'll see when you go to the exhibition, you'll see this drawing. This drawing is a map of where all the toilets are in that reception area. We used GIS, and we actually helped people learn how to use GIS, which is a very powerful tool, as a bottom-up tool. It's normally used, of course, as a planning tool. And then we were able to plot what toilets were where, what was the situation with them, what they needed to have improved. So again, like the Gabriela thing, using a manual to then document all of this. So a very useful sort of way of using design to then plot and then to record. Next, please. What has been really interesting out of this project is that we were able to do this working with these international students, but also then to help start a cooperative. And that cooperative has now gone through a year and a half of development, not without pain, and it's very difficult to do. So I think one should never gloss over how hard things are to do. So again, we were talking before, Ralph and I, and saying, you know, there's a real danger of internationals coming in, landing in, and moving out. Next. And I just wanted to give you, because the people in this co-op have then set up their structure. This is their organization. This PowerPoint is actually taken from the talk that we gave at Columbia University at Parsons a week or so ago, and this was the part they did. So they talked about their organization. So the next slide. And the person on the top right is the person who was part of our project and stayed as a project manager. And I mention her because it's incredibly important that somebody stays with the project and somebody keeps going. Next. That's their work. They meet regularly. They get together. Next. They make timesheets. Next. They are working on the drains. This is them on the hands-on. They work on the toilets, more WASSUP at work, taps, and they also engage with the broader community and with arts organisations, so they do things like education, edutainment, and these are extremely important. This project has built confidence and it's created jobs, and when you've got 65% unemployment, that's a really key issue. Next. And here they are, they painted them. Next. And this is the WASSUP people who came for the exhibition opening. And there's a T-shirt, which I forgot to bring, but we did a T-shirt, I Love Deep T-shirt. And I just wanted to finish with a couple of remarks that I hope will perhaps lead us into some discussion about innovative solutions. I think innovative solutions for tricky problems require really nimble and lateral thinking, and I think that we've been able to do. Innovative solutions can flourish when universities work with communities. The academic acupuncture I mentioned is probably a useful concept. I'd like your opinion. Under-resourced communities need ongoing support. And this is something that we've seen, so that the hit and run that is very often the case of international organisations has to be very carefully watched. I think real and deep change requires long-haul commitment, and that's where the person I mentioned, the person who stayed behind and is working onward, has been really important. And the other 90%, the cities exhibition, I think definitely needs to go to the other 90%. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to thank all these wonderful panelists for the amazing presentations. And I know you must have a million questions. So please raise your hand if you'd like to ask a question, but do identify yourself and say who the question's for. Or if it's general, then you don't have to do that. So why don't we begin with you, please?
Hi, my name is
I think a microphone is going to go around.
I might be able to speak up.
Okay, all right, why don't you?
My
Yes.
name is Alina Alvarez, and I am a graphic designer and visual communicator. And I have a question, and the reason I'm here is because I'm very interested, but I would like to know if any of you have organizations, projects that you would like to get people involved, because as a solo designer with this, I don't have anyone to work as partner. It's awesome to see you work, but it's hard to get involved.
Maybe just say the exit, these inter-designs, they don't happen very frequently, but when they do happen, there's industrial designers and graphic designers for communication. So have a look out for that. This is one pointer to go for.
It just so happens that our team is particularly South Africa heavy today, but in any case, I think it would be great if you would later on leave your information, and then we can all get back to you. Thank you. Yes, Surkab.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for such an excellent panel. I guess my question, I have two questions. The first question is coming from a public health point of view, because I'm a public health professional. How do you involve health or public health in your projects when you're designing projects? And the other question is, a lot of the focus was on cities. Rural development and connecting people in rural areas to cities or to the infrastructure available in the cities is also an important issue. How is the scaling of what work you're doing something that is in the works, or what are your thoughts on that?
Anna, do you want to take that, because your work is most related to that?
The public health issues, we haven't actually measured the public health improvements. I gave you anecdotal about temperature and so on and so forth, about cleanliness with the water and the drains. So it's that sort. But I would like to refer you to, because I think what one needs is methodological tools to actually do this. And I would like to refer everybody to the project that won the UN World Habitat Awards this year. That happened to be an Australian project. It was Health Habitat. Paul Falleris is the man who's been running that for the last 26 years, of really looking at health improvements for Indigenous Australians. He's also worked in Nepal, and has recently been doing work in the Bronx with Roseanne Haggerty. But what is remarkable about that, it is a combination between architecture, medicine or doctors and anthropologists. So they really have been extremely diligent in the way they've recorded their information and the way they've measured it. So I think just because I think that is part of the issues, is being methodologically sound and not just going off and doing things you think are great. And that I would like to recommend to everybody, because I think one can learn a hell of a lot from that. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think the way that some of the SDI federations address a public health issue is seeing public health through the lens of poverty and exclusion. And the way that SDI federations organize, when we talk about a federation, it's a federation of savings groups. So the savings group is partly about saving money, but what's more important is that people are talking to each other regularly, and that becomes a tool for people to know what's going on in other households and being able to spot public health issues when they arise. Now, the other issue is a lot of the work that people are talking about relates to water and sanitation, which is obviously a huge public health thing.
Yes, please.
Thank you for your presentations. I know Ben mentioned it briefly, engaging with governments, but I was wondering some of your strategies and tools to communicate with the governments in the countries that you're working in, not only to scale up these projects, but also since many are outsiders working in these communities, like how you can engage with local governments there.
I was going to ask him that also about political tool. I think that was a very provocative idea. Please.
Well, I think this issue of how do you network communities at a scale that can begin to address the scale at which governments work. So often that means how do you build citywide networks? There are other examples where you look at networking communities by different issues. So it may be the kind of land that different settlements are on. Like in Johannesburg, there's a network of communities that all live on land owned by mining companies. So they don't even need, it may not be the negotiation with government that's most important, but the negotiation with the mining company that's the key landowner. Yeah.
I'm going to ask Gabriela because she said that her work was politically incorrect. So I think we want to learn what you think about that.
Yeah, okay. Well, both of them, because first I wanted to that's one thing that we as designers, we can be useful is in connecting people with government, because sometimes people, they go to the government, they go to the office, knock at the doors, and they don't listen to them. But if you go with the seal of an university and with a proper, well-drawn plan and proper, 3D pictures, maybe they look different. It's the same idea, but sometimes government officials are quite snobs, so that's a work that we can do, help people. And you say about politically incorrect, right, because let's say governments, in the academy and here and the United Nations, they have a lot of works signed a lot of years, signed a few years ago, that says that people have a right for housing, right for the city, a lot of things that we sometimes think that everybody agree. But that's not so true. At least in Argentina, a lot of people think the land is as an investment, so private property on land is very difficult. So even if we know that government agencies are using the manual, are using, we know because we know people there, so we know that they are using them, that I don't think that they would be eager to print it, for example. I don't know, I never ask actually, but because it's politically incorrect, because it's talking about because it's talking about an old idea of government that says that government must build a lot of houses. So if they make something like the manual, for the most of the people can think, they do that because they don't work properly. It's quite difficult to explain.
I think Anna said that as well, that it's really not going to happen that the governments are going to be able to address all the housing shortage and the needs for the people, so there have to be other mechanisms. Yes.
Can I just,
Yes.
I mean, the concept I was just putting out to you was the academic acupuncture, which, it's not an original one, but I think there is, for the sort of people that we are here, there's a way in which one can use, and I think this is precisely what this exhibition is doing, is using one's skills to bring things to other people deals with tension, but you can sort of put, pressure on a point, which then moves the tension. And I, just give one example of this marvellous arts and culture organisation that's now functioning and also having health benefits because they do the edutainment, that this has been taken under the wing now of the head of arts and culture in Johannesburg. And it's precisely because of that sort of thing, and you can do this, you can use your skills and your contacts and so on and so forth. And I think that's a really good use of professional skills, of institutional skills, of university skills, or whatever it might be. Unfortunately, that's the way the world works. A person from Deep Sloot Township is not going to have much luck at knocking on somebody's door, by and large.
Thank you. Yes, please.
I'm an urbanism student. I'm from India. So it is very interesting about your installation idea, which is because the slums which are located in the tropics, it's a huge issue. This installation is a huge issue. And since I live close to slums, I know this problem actually. But since continuing the same question, you see, how do you see this link between the private-public or public-private partnership between this installation? I'm talking about the idea of generating products. So this is a huge market to really create installations for the slum housing. Because moving from traditional practices of having thatch roofs to metal roofs and GI sheets, this is a huge problem which we face day in and out. So do you see a future where private companies take over this market as the insulation market, which could really be a big issue which 1 billion people living in?
It's huge. It's totally huge. Yeah, I don't think the technical problems are quite solved, and this is what we probably need some even better. We worked with some of the people from Wits universities, but what you do, of course, is you get condensation, and you've got heat inside. You've got the condensation, and it really is a problem. So I think we got better at it, but I mean, it's the sort of thing. It's so cheap you can then replace it quite quickly as well. I think just the comfort levels of the difference it makes. Now, I have not been in a tin shack when it's pouring and hailing. I haven't been in there. I imagine it's amazing and awful. Or when it's really hot in summer or really cold in winter. And you're getting the same sort of issues, maybe not as extreme in India because you're near the tropics, but I think there's probably a tremendous market for that. And with technological upgrades.
Right.
Yeah, and also then the people do it themselves, because the wonderful picture of the women, we sort of experimented. We were getting bits of strapping tape off crates and things that we found. It was extremely cheap, and they just got it and they just did it. There's some videos on the website if you want to have a look at the people doing it.
I think that you are also bringing up a really, really important issue that if you think about this book, maybe you're familiar with, it's A Fortune at the Bottom of the Pyramid. The needs at the bottom of the pyramid, we're talking about 2 billion people. They're huge. There's a great market there. And if you think about the sorts of innovations that are happening now, and for them, like Ralph said, to be industrialized, and then for entrepreneurs and micro-entrepreneurs and self-help groups and everybody sort of begin to produce them. Do you want to talk a bit about that?
Thank you. I think that the participation is threefold, which is the triple bottom line, which is business, people, and the planet. And if you combine all of those together, and we can't expect the government always to come up with the regulations and with the goodwill and everything. And the world of people who are underprivileged are very small. There may be a sign, the DTI, the Department of Trade and Industry out there, but somebody may not know how to go and access that fund. And that's where industry, and maybe the industry, we should look at a transformed industry where there's people making things that they use themselves. So it's not just the big factory in China or in Europe or wherever, where we're just making things for people, but it's be part of that whole process. And I think that is really where we can have to look at transforming everything around us, and the opportunity is there. There's a business opportunity, and I think that's the biggest thing. We mustn't just always look at what is the handout going to be there.
I'm really intrigued by your bicycle project and how you sort of broke it down into pieces, and I'm wondering that there must be so many other things that you can do that to, and then people begin to manufacture those, and then for them to get better at doing it and be able to sell it to others. So I think that maybe the same process has to be spread across to many, many fields. Yeah.
Like this is the kiosk. Is another example of what's happening there.
Thank you. Yes, there are a lot of fans. Please.
I'm from Brazil, and in Rio de Janeiro they're starting to formalize some of the informal settlements, mainly as a publicity stunt, I believe, for the Olympics. But it actually is helping people, and I wonder, especially with the South Africa designers, how did the World Cup there benefit your field and the public and your constituents? And do you think it's a sustainable benefit?
All I could say was we were in Johannesburg a couple of years ahead of the Olympics, and the list was so tightly controlled as who could make products or sell products. The people in the township we worked in never got a look in. I mean, very often it happens with these big hallmark events, they move the poor out of the way. I hope Rio is not going to do the same. I don't know about
later
Johannesburg.
on you should also have a conversation with Carl, who knows more about that. Carl, can you just raise your hand so he'll find you? Okay, please. Does anybody want to?
Yeah, no, on that, what's happening in Cape Town was that fortunately the design or the Craft and Design Institute got involved with the bodies, and they actually formed something quite unique, which is a body that worked with the city, which is a Cape Town partnership, and they then linked with everybody in the city to start these initiatives. But again, it's access, and you need that will to happen. So Cape Town was very successful in that. In terms of the city planning, unfortunately, the stadium went into sort of very much underneath the mountain, which actually should have been more closer to the eastern part of the city where there's more needed. But there needs to be that partnership. I would say that's a requirement.
Yes, please.
I think in the South African case, often we expect that a huge mega event like a Olympics or a World Cup is going to bring with it large evictions of poor people. And I think in the South African case, there were evictions going on, but it's unclear that there were any more evictions going on than there were before the World Cup was awarded to South Africa. So I think the broader issue, and this speaks to the question about how do you engage with government, is are these events creating or highlighting a specific kind of logic in terms of what are the developmental outcomes that governments are focusing on? And so to bring it back to the issue of design, how can you use the tools of design to build an alternative logic which brings attention to the way that poor people work and the way that poor people are existing in cities? And it's that kind of invisibility that is the first precondition to allow for the kinds of evictions that slum dwellers are facing all over the world, whether there's a mega event or not.
In some ways, such events can be used to highlight that situation, so they can be used very positively. Yes, please.
One question I had in coming at the exhibit, I'm not at all a designer, but is in that Anna mentioned in the hit and run sort of involvement from universities, is what are you able to do to keep them involved so that the improvements that are being made don't just regress again and end up the same way they were?
Sustainability. How can your interventions be sustainable?
Well, I think the key point is what Anna talks is just standing a long time. I think it's very important because we need a long time to understand the settlement logic, and after that to start to talk, and a long time after that to propose. To work together. I think it's, as Anna says, it's very important to be able to be a long time. So that because for sure the design answers that we are giving there are right, are sustainable, because we have to know well people before we start to design. So I think answer is time.
And also I think that there needs to be a strategy to stay till the project becomes sustainable, and then also have an exit strategy, because you don't want to make people dependent on yourself. Do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, I'd just like to say, I think one needs a model, and I've tried but have failed. And we were in Vancouver. Gabriela was there also with us. And in Vancouver, UBC has a shop front in the downtown east side. And it's really impressive. And so it's a place where students go and they will offer expertise in one thing or another. There'll be sort of bridging courses and so on. And I mean, you'd be surprised if you don't know Vancouver, which is, the most livable city. I think Melbourne or Sydney probably thinks they're the most livable, but never mind. But Vancouver, I think, really gets it. And that in that city, it's the poorest postcode in North America. I mean, it's extraordinary, blocks away. And I was so taken with this UBC model of the shop front. So I was trying to peddle in Johannesburg that model. And then taking, and I don't know what you would think of this, because you're working in slightly different fields, but it just seems to me that the universities are such huge resources for providing assistance of the ongoing sort. And so we did this arts centre, which I showed you a little photograph of, and it's a place, very typical. It has a courtyard and there's some buildings that said, right, you could have a university shop front in there, and then the universities could be having people coming there all the time on a systematic basis. And there's almost, I think, across any discipline, for any amount of time, there would always, there'd always be a need. And what you're doing also is then training your next generation of professionals to think that this is worthwhile work. And so there the model also gets into shaky ground, where universities, by and large, my own included, really have no respect for this sort of work. And also, it doesn't fall into the academic model, which is really, Gita's maybe slightly different, but it really doesn't fall into the model of, academic work is about, publications, about research, about grants, about this, that, and the other. It's not so much about this hands-on. So it is a very problematic, but I think one needs to look for the model. I think also you do need to look for what is sustainable, and so that, that then skills are built up, and then that you can move away. My colleague Jennifer, the blonde I showed you, she thinks it'll probably take 2 or 3 years. And it's not that she's there all the time, but it's little bits and pieces they just have not a clue how to do. And it's no fault. They know how to do other things wonderfully, and of course she's learning all the time. But there is that sort of bridging knowledge, and I'm sure you would both sort of know about that.
Yeah.
All of you would.
This resonates a lot with something that SDI has been trying to do, because there was this realization that a lot of the people who are coming from African planning schools were the people who ended up as the key officials that the SDI federations were trying to negotiate with. And now SDI is engaged in a partnership with the Association of African Planning Schools to build exactly these kinds of local collaborations in all of the countries where SDI is operating. I think there are two sides to this. One is exposure to informal settlements, like you're talking about, Anna, and saying that this is a kind of key priority for academic planning education. The second is a need to rethink how do academic institutions really engage with communities once they're on the ground. I think the model that you're talking about, Gabriela, where you can give this kind of official, formal imprimatur, make things seem more acceptable to government or other formal actors is part of it. But I think universities need to be willing to be used, basically, and not to be only about extracting for themselves in these kinds of partnerships.
Yeah. And the UN, sorry, I was just going to say, I don't know whether our UN representative is still here, but UN Habitat has this organisation called the Habitat Partner Universities Initiative, in which they have precisely, Anna Chibayuka, when she was heading it up, she said, the universities have got to do more. She said, we're training the people for the coming generations, they've got to do more. And that is certainly expanding. I don't know about in Argentina.
No, we are trying, but also and putting together this with the timing, I think the university studies timing is so bad for working with the people because, you know, we have a semester or 1 year, like more, the most, and we have also people to learn how to work there. The academic timing is not very compatible with
Doesn't allow it.
society timing. It's a problem we have to solve some way. I don't know.
What we do, and it's quite interesting, is, and I think universities are fantastic places and safe places where that's neutral, and a lot of wisdom come from there. But projects like this, because of the timescales and so on, not following through, is they're coming to us and say, can you manage this for us? Because we design products. We take products that are high-end, take a cell phone, for instance, and we've got to make the client happy, and we've got to deliver. So we understand the process, and this is where the partnership needs to come in with between public, private, and education, and working together. And we can see, we're already seeing the results of that. So bring the industry into that.
You know, we have to bring this panel to a close, but you have in front of you these 4 visionary people. So I'm going to ask each one of them in just 1 or 2 sentences to say that if there was one significant change they could make or one big vision that they want to say, what that is. And Anna, I'm going to start with you.
No, why don't you start on the other end? Are you seriously saying with me?
Oh, no.
I hate
Ralph
those
is going to start. We'll go this way.
For me, it would be to change the way the world is thinking.
Okay.
And I can expand on that, but it's just in the way we think and the way we consume, and just to look at what is out there, and just to be able to transform ourselves.
That's very, very important. Very well said. Please, what's your big vision and big dream?
I think we have academics have to democratic, you know, to be more connect. We should come back to our bases. Designers, we design for the other 99%.
Yes.
I think it will be good also for the disciplines. You know, disciplines are big in design are becoming very full. We need also the society to become more real.
More real and more engaged.
Yeah.
Thank you. Please.
Yeah, I think the kinds of things that we're discussing today, they show that in all kinds of institutions, and this is something that designers need to be thinking about, because I know there are a lot in the room, how can we break down the false assumptions around expertise that exists in institutions, whether they're in government, whether they're in academia, even in the private sector, to open up the space for the 90% or the 99% to really kind of be the essence of what those institutions are about.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said.
Okay, I still haven't got an answer, but I mean, I think Zuccotti Park is actually quite interesting, and I think that way of not having the answers, but of questioning the system, of saying, you know, it's sort of got terminal, and I think in a sense the numbers are so challenging. That there really has to be a really big think change, and I would agree with all these people. Somehow we have to really change the way of thinking wherever we are, and I would say that's to you as well. You know, go out and think about how you can change what you do, and that's all I think any of us have really done. You start a little scale, and you just try a little bit, you go a little bit. So that would be my answer.
Thank you. Shall we give our panelists a big round of applause?
And Geeta, what would your vision be?
I think my big thing would be to scale up, because all the work that you saw, it's amazing, it's wonderful, but it is a drop in the ocean. We're talking about 2 billion people. So I think how to scale it up, how to bring financial resources to it, how to get everybody engaged. I think that too many people are not engaged with these issues. Yeah. So I would like to see this, the media and universities and everybody pick it up and really say that we are a connected world and we cannot go anywhere if we leave these 2 billion people behind. So I would like to see these things scale up, and I'd like to see everybody pitch in for that.
Great. That's a great way to end this discussion tonight. Please join us at the United Nations with the Visitor Center, 46th and First Avenue, for Design with the Other 90% Cities exhibition. We're also online. And we also have just launched, starting, probably won't be launched until Monday. We've got a soft launch on Design Other 90 Network.org, where you can upload your own projects. So please, please, please take a look at that. And join us on November 17th for Sustainable and Inclusive Cities, the Right to the City, and on December 1st, Community Upgrading in Bangkok, Thailand. Thanks again for coming tonight.